G'day Gear Junkies, Jason here. I have here the BK Butler tube driver. This is a classic design that goes all the way back to the 70s and was used by great players such as Dave Gilmour and Eric Johnson. But the question is, should I keep or sell? I'm playing my Fender Deluxe Stratocaster through my Deluxe Reverb amplifier. I will, however, switch to humbuckers later on, but this is my clean sound. So it's completely clean, no breakup from the amplifier, there's just a little bit of reverb that's coming from the amp. All right, tube driver, I've got the level half of the way up and I've got all the other knobs down. Now, the first thing to point out with this pedal is that the dials go up in clicks. It's not a smooth taper, it sort of, each position, it clicks from one to the other, which is a little bit different. I mean, I'm used to that on rack gear, but on a pedal, that's kind of a bit different. So, as you can see, I've got the EQ all the way down, but it's not really making my sound any more dull. So it's got that edge of breakup sort of sound. It's very dynamic. If I play softly, it'll be almost clean. But if I dig in, you can definitely hear the hair on there. All right, let's go through and see how much gain this actually has. So we're up to about 11 o'clock now. So it's got a fair bit of drive. We're only half the way up here. Now we're starting to get into distortion territory. It does actually sound quite harsh because it is a hard clipping pedal, so it's really chopping the tops off those waveforms to create that sort of really compressed overdrive sound. As you can hear there, it's got a lot of sustain. I mean, that drive up all the way, it really is very squishy to play. It's not really reacting to any dynamics that I'm using. It's just squishing down on the front of that note like a fuzz pedal would. And in fact, with it on the neck pickup like that, it really does sound like a fuzz. Yeah, it's very, very fuzzy and very woolly. If I back the drive off just a bit, it really has a sort of indie rock sort of sound. Back onto the bridge pickup. going to back the drive off a little bit and then see if I can use my volume pot to get to react with the pedal. To me, this is almost like an overdrive, distortion, and a fuzz all rolled into one. It's capable of a lot of different tones. All right, let's check out these EQ controls. So we've got high and low. Wow, the low control definitely comes with a volume boost. Yeah, they're very, very powerful. I mean, half the way up, I mean, that's a bit too much. I might even go back to the bridge pickup here. That's pretty good. That is really helping to fatten up this bridge single coil, which can sound very ice picky and very thin, but especially with that low control, if I turn the high down a little bit, that's really beefy and really does help to thicken it up. All right, let's try both controls all the way up. All right, so that's way too much. The high control. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of where that high end is placed. It sounds almost like a cheap transistor amplifier or a cheap distortion pedal, but it does have its advantages because this is such a chewy, compressed overdrive. You just need a little bit of extra top end to really cut through a mix. So I'll probably wind that down. In fact, I would say that these EQ controls are so powerful, you don't need much at all. Otherwise, it really does overpower your tone. Now for some humbuckers. I've got my PRS Custom 24, which I recently purchased. I will make a video about this guitar in the not too distant future, but at the moment, my clean sound now sounds like this. Now, it's in E flat, whereas the other guitar was in E major, so it will sound a little bit chunkier. All right, the tube driver, I've put the EQ back to 0, and let's wind in some of that tube drive. Beautiful warm overdrive on the neck pickup like that. I think at low gain settings it loses a little bit of presence, so I think you need to compensate a little bit with the high control there. Yeah, that sounds really nice and warm. Yeah, it's got plenty of everything. It's got highs, it's got lows, it's got everything in between. It's a very good rhythm overdrive. Get all of that note definition in the chord. You get the lows and the highs and everything in between. So that makes it a really great rhythm overdrive. Really getting into distortion territory there with that extra drive. That's only half of the way up. Yeah, you could definitely use that as a lead overdrive as well, which is kind of odd because usually I would like to have an overdrive that's a little bit more focused, have a little less high end for my lead lines, but that sounds really, really good. I could use that as a sort of all-purpose overdrive. Now let's see how it reacts to the volume pot as well. Yeah, once you get that volume up and get all that drive in there, it has a certain chewiness. It sort of squishes down on the front end of each note, which, you know, it gives you the impression that you're running through a really hot tube amp. I'll try that again with something a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, when you roll down that volume, it doesn't take off too much of the high end, which happens particularly on single coil pickups. Then my volume's on about 4 there. And that's still a very usable sound. So if you're one of these guys that wants to have an overdrive or distortion that's really reactive to your volume pot, that you can use your volume pot to get all sorts of different sounds, I think this is a really, really good option for you. Yeah, I know you want to hear it all the way up, so let's do that. All right. Yeah, you can really hear it squishing down on the front end of every note. It really does feel like a fuzz. All up, I think this sounds really great with this particular guitar. Now, the way that Eric Johnson uses this pedal is that he puts it in front of his cranked Marshall Plexis. Now, I don't have a Marshall Plexi, but I do have a Marshall DSL 40, and I've got it on the classic gain channel, and it sounds like this. And when I click on the pedal, it's going to give me more gain, more sustain, and more compression, and that's going to give it that sort of violin-like smoothness that Eric Johnson is famous for. You get all that smoothness because it's really taking away the front end of the transient of every note. It's squishing it down to a more even volume for every single note. Not the sort of sound that I would use, but I can understand why someone like Eric Johnson would use a sound like that. It is incredibly smooth. Now, the tube driver here is in a class all of its own. It's not like any other overdrive pedal that I have in my collection. And in fact, I say the word overdrive very loosely because I think this does both overdrive and distortion. The gain range on this pedal is interesting because it can do slightly broken up tones right through to almost fuzz-like tones. So it's got a hell of a lot of gain on tap, and it's really gnarly when you get it right up there because it's a hard clipping pedal. It really does compress quite hard, and it starts to sag like a valve amplifier. In fact, that's how I think of this pedal. I don't so much think of it as an overdrive pedal. I think of it as an extra channel on my Fender amplifier. Because my Fender amplifier is so clean, and this doesn't tend to color my tone too much, particularly with the EQ controls down, I think of it more as an overdrive channel for my Fender amplifier. Now, going into an already overdriven amplifier, because it's already compressing and overdriving, when you add this to it, it compresses even more, and you lose a lot of your note definition, and you get that sort of violin Eric Johnson sort of sound. Now, that's a tone all of its own, and I'm not going to say that's good or bad. It just really depends on what you're after. The EQ on this is very, very powerful, and I would even say it's too powerful. I would never imagine using those EQ controls past halfway. In fact, a lot of players use this pedal with the EQ controls all the way down, and it's particularly the high control. The low one is voiced quite nicely to give you a bit extra thickness and thud, almost like you're playing through a 4x12 cabinet, but the high control is very, very nasty, and although I can see in a mix, particularly if you're struggling to sort of be heard in a mix, without turning your overall sound up, if you just turn that high control up, you will start to cut through that mix a bit more. But if you're just playing in a bedroom by yourself, that high control can be quite nasty. So like even Eric Johnson apparently uses it all the way down. If I had a complaint about this pedal, it's just how big it is. I mean, particularly how tall it is. I mean, it's a fairly wide pedal, but it's incredibly tall. It's easily the tallest pedal that I own. And it also runs off 240 volts power, so it has different power requirements. So if you're trying to run a discrete pedal board like I do, this is just going to take up far too much space and with different power requirements. So it's not something I would ever use in my live rig. If I wanted that tube driver tone live, I just find a decent alternative, something like the Hardwire SC2 valve distortion by Digitech. This is obviously based on the tube driver. You can get ones that are cheaper than this, and you can also get ones that are more expensive. And if you'd like to see me maybe compare these against the actual tube driver, let me know in the comments and I just might make that happen. So going back to my original question, should I keep or sell the tube driver? Well, I know I'll probably never use it live, but I can definitely find a use for this in the studio. I think it's really handy to have a bunch of different overdrive pedals in my collection to get that sound that I'm looking for at any given time. And this is a fairly flexible pedal too, so I think I can find a use for it, at least for a while. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. You can support this channel by going to the Middle Aged Gear Junkie store and buying some merchandise, and you can also join the Middle Aged Gear Junkie Facebook page. We'd love to have you along. Other than that, my name is Jason. Have a great day. See you later.